So, hello everyone and welcome. Now that the A button challenge is pretty much over for Hat in Time, I have the Hat in Time ABC sheet, courtesy of Jimmy Jani, of course, up here. And I'm just going to very quickly go through all the different stages and see where all the different A presses actually are when it comes to a full game run. Now, something to keep in mind that I haven't really noted during any of my videos, because it just wasn't part of any of those, is the fact that, of course, when you go into a stage, you're gonna have to press the A button. This is something that we don't really take into consideration for any of these, because it doesn't really matter for the actual gameplay aspect of going through a stage without pressing the A button. Yeah, of course you have to press the A button to get into it, and you can't press any of the other buttons to do it. For text boxes, of course, you can press the B button, and you can press start and then press start again to open up and close the menu. Nice. But also at some point, if you do the actual full game run of the game, you will have to press the A button to equip hats. Equip your first hat. I mean, you need to craft it, of course. So you need to order to craft hats. You would have to do that. For example, press the A button there. But when it comes to like stuff like menuing like that, we don't really take it into consideration because, like I said, it's not part of the actual gameplay aspect. You don't come in here seeing like, oh, how can we get around menuing? Pressing A to do menuing. I mean, theoretically, you can also go around a lot of the menuing stuff by using mouse and keyboard. Now, you could just say, well, if you use for example a PS4 controller, you could say, okay, if you use a PS4 controller, that thing doesn't have an A button, so it's not an A press. That's not what I mean. It's rather that on keyboard there is an equivalent to the jump button, which I think it's space, so it would be a no space run. But the thing is, on keyboard you can sometimes press enter to do menuing as well, but enter doesn't jump you. Enter does not jump you, but it can be used for menuing. So you can argue that, well, if the whole point of the entire thing is to do it without the jump button, you can do it without the jump button on mouse and keyboard. But, you know, this is why sometimes we see stuff like this here, where this would be a 0 A press, but if we do not allow keyboard, it would be an A press, because there's menuing, like having to talk to a guy, or not really talking to a guy, it's accepting a yes or no thing, where you, for example, in Debut Studio, you need to paint your own face or something, and then you need to press OK, but you can't press OK unless you press the A button. But on keyboard, you can even press left mouse, which I think left mouse is the attack button on keyboard and mouse. So you can do it with attack button on keyboard and mouse, which is not possible on controller. It's a bit weird. But yeah, same thing with Mirror and Owl Express, for example, contractual obligations, stuff like that. In general, also, apart from contractual obligations, just in subcon, there are places where you need to accept a contract. Like if you do a full game run, you have to get like more than one contract, of course, and those would be A presses as well. Or if you use keyboard, it would be keyboard. So that's the whole keyboard and mouse thing, and the whole idea behind the actual A presser is a bit clarified. Now, if you do an actual A press run, there's also something else to keep in mind, is that if we start from the very beginning of the game, we don't have access to any of our badges and hats. So of course there would be extra A presses buying the hat, buying the badge, buying the no bonk badge, because we kind of need the no bonk badge in many places. You can kind of set the FPS to unlocked before the run, so it's not something you need to do, and you don't really need to switch during a run that much. Also, apart from the A presses that you need to get into the stage, of course, there is, well, I think if you want to put together the, what is it? You put like the relics on the relic slots, and I think that might take A presses. I don't actually know if that does, but I think that also might take A presses. Actually, I'm fairly certain take A presses, but you can probably also do that with menuing with mouse and keyboard. Now, something else also, when we do a full game run, would be the ice hat. Now we need to get the ice hat first, and usually you wouldn't be able to get the ice hat in Mafia Town, but we can't get out of Mafia Town unless we get a certain number of timepieces first. And we need the ice hat as soon as she came from outer space, or even sooner. We need it as soon as Barrel Battle. That's as soon as we need the ice hat for. So how do we get around that? How do we get the ice hat in Welcome to Mafia Town? Now I think it's actually, I don't know if they're there, but you can reach the place that has the two buckets in Welcome to Mafia Town. And then with the 2 buckets, you can do bucket flying to a very specific spot on the map. There's this like, oh, I don't know exactly where it is, but there's like a high up place a bit further outside towards the beach. Like a really high place where you're supposed to use an ice hat platform to catapult your way on top of a really high platform, and then there's actually an ice hat yarn up there. Now if we have access to the buckets and we can do bucket flying, we can go all the way up there and get the ice hat yarn, and with that we can create the ice hat, of course. We just need a few other yarns in order to be able to craft it, but Mafia Town has a lot of yarn, and because we'll be able with bucket flying to reach very, very high places, we can make do. We can get the yarns possible. Like it's possible to get all the yarns that we need to craft the ice set. So we can craft the ice set, takes an A press or menuing keyboard. In general, I think if we use mouse and keyboard, a no A or no jump rather, full game playthrough is possible. One thing to watch out for though is with the full game playthrough is the fact that we have to do She Came From Outer Space. And the problem with She Came From Outer Space is that we're gonna have to do it RTA if we do a full game playthrough. Now we're probably gonna set our FPS a bit higher, maybe like 90 or 120, maybe even a bit higher, who knows. And on higher FPS, doing bucket flying is not that simple. Also, sorry. Apart from bucket flying, we also need to do these really difficult jumps at the end of She Came From Outer Space. And that's also something that doing an RTA, like it's possible, definitely, but it can take a very, very long amount of time of trial and error to get them down correctly, and it can take a very long time. But overall, it is possible to beat the entire game in 0 A presses, because I mean, we can do all of this in 0 A presses. Like, look at how much stuff we can actually do in 0 A presses in this game. So much stuff, actually. Like some of this stuff, like maybe also the windmill, because you have to do a scooter glitch, is very difficult in 0 A. Because it's just a really weird glitch that only happens very, very randomly and very rarely. So, I mean, it's possible, RTA, but very annoying. We wouldn't have to do windmill though in a full playthrough, because we can just we're not probably gonna do that much of part 4 anyway. What else do we have? Yeah, you can see that because there are so many stages in here that are 0 A, we can very easily do a full playthrough, but there are a few places where there are actually A presses that we couldn't quite get rid of, and this is probably what you came here for, to see where the actual A presses are. First off, we have two in the moon, both of one of which is jumping long distance, but the thing is, there's a place where you activate a button and then a platform moves out to make it possible for you to do the jump. But with the platform moving out, you actually do get a little bit of momentum if you jump off of the moving platform. Now the thing is, that jump is 1A either way if you take the momentum or not. The problem is, if you take the momentum and try and just walk off and not do an actual jump, you can get fairly close, but you can't actually quite make the jump. So we're not quite certain if maybe if you do a little bit of, maybe you can kind of get more momentum out of moving platforms. We're not quite sure, but if it is possible, maybe if you take the scooter along that moving platform, it would be possible to save that A press. The other A press in there is getting up a wall jump place. Now, that's something where, I think these, in general, most of these A presses are, there's wall jump places. Now, there is this one place before that wall jump where you have the pillars that come out of the ground, and if you stand on a pillar and while it's moving up, you jump, you go really high, and you can actually use that height to jump over everything. The problem is that's also an A press. So, I mean, we cannot do the wall jump with another A press, but then it's still an A press. We didn't actually save an A press. So we would have to somehow figure out how to somehow control that momentum, upwards momentum, with other ways. I mean, Ice Hat doesn't work because that gives you a set amount of speed upwards, and then it also stops you in midair. So we can't use that to get a lot of upwards momentum from the moving platforms. But if there was some other way of doing it, we would be able to save an A press there as well. The other one is the Owl Express, which is just wall jumps. It's just really high wall jump sections where we're not quite sure what we can even do there. There's like 2 places, I think, where we need to do a wall jump. And one of those is already really difficult to just do in one. Like there's one wall jump section that's really high and we do it in 1 A press. That's already really difficult. Another one that's probably never going to happen is Queen Vanessa's Manor. You can get all the way to the end of Vanessa's Manor, and the problem is, you need, in order, what we usually do to jump is we either do wall runs, or we do dives, or we do ice hats, and any combination of those. Any combination of those is how we jump. There are some places where you can argue that maybe we could jump here as well by going on the scooter and then getting off the scooter, because if you get off the scooter, you do a tiny jump. So these are like the 4 ways of getting around in 3-dimensional space without the A button. Problem is, none of those work in Queen Vanessa's Manor. None of those 4 ways of getting around in 3-dimensional space work in Queen Vanessa's Manor. The only thing we can do in Vanessa's Manor is walk and crawl. Now, because of Vanessa Skip, which is an intended developer shortcut that is free for everyone. I mean, they even said, like, when we discovered it, like, the speedrunners found our little thing that we put in the game for them. Nice. Anyway, so because of Vanessa Skip, we can get to the very end of the entire manor. The problem is, there's 2 steps that we need to climb on. However, because you can crawl, there's this really weird thing where you can crawl along the surface of the step, and it can randomly bump you upwards. Like, it can randomly get stuck on the step, and then if you spam the button for crawling, it will pump you upwards, and then it allows you to reach the next area. And by doing that, even though it's extremely frustrating, and it took me like 2 hours of trial and error to do it correctly. I mean, it practiced it, and then I did it live, so maybe I should have just recorded my practice attempts, whatever. So we can get over the 2 steps. The problem is, and that's the reason why that is an A press, at the very end of that we open a chest, and in that chest is a timepiece which then floats up, and I mean, it's right above you. The problem is, it's above you. If you walk under the timepiece, you can't get it. You have to jump to get the timepiece, and because we have none of these 4 ways of getting around in 3-dimensional 3-dimensional space, sorry, we can't get up to the timepiece. You could argue that maybe with the whole the thing that we did where we crawled around into the ledge and it bumped us up, maybe we can bump us up onto the chest, and then from the chest we fall off onto the timepiece. Yeah, it doesn't work because the timepiece is too far away from the chest, and I don't even know if we can get on top of the chest, but I know my physics. I know the chest is too far away from the timepiece. It's very obvious that that will not work. So that's definitely an A press, that even if we figure out how to do really high, like wall run sections like in the Moon or Owl Express, or really far jumps, we still won't be able to save that A press because we just don't have anything in that area. We have walking and crawling and the Dweller Mask, which doesn't do anything in that place anyway, so that sucks. Also, Time Raft Village, this is another wall run section. This is one of those sections where, even though it's a really difficult and high wall run section, it is actually possible to save A presses, because you can do that first a wall run section, even though it's really high. You can still do it by just doing a really weird amount of really weird sequence of jumps, which is actually right here. I've done it in my video. Then chapter 4, which amazingly is not actually too difficult in my opinion to do 0A in, apart from Windmill. Windmill is like, oh, why? Windmill is like the most difficult one of them all, but it is possible 0A. I've talked about it in that video. Now, the timer for Curly Tail Trail is just that we need to reach a higher platform, but we can't quite get on top of the platform because even our highest jump that we have doesn't get us on top of the platform, and so we would grab the ledge. But if we hold down the A button, instead of grabbing the ledge, we will then jump up on top of the ledge. So this would be a 0.5A to get on top of the ledge. Also, something to mention is my most up-to-date video on GK from Outer Space is 0.5 A presses, but it says 0 A presses. I talked about this before. In TAS, it is possible to get to 0 A presses on this one. But I mean, it's also possible in RTA. It's just that in RTA, it's so incredibly difficult because you have to do perfect bucket flying and then nail both jumps at the end, which are really difficult as well. Is that in an RTA attempt, I much rather would just do 0.5A. But yeah, RTS is 0A. Then we have the gallery, which it has a similar problem than Curly Tail Trail. At the very end of the stage, we need to get up on top of a platform, but the platform is a bit high, we only grab the ledge, and so in order to not grab the ledge, we hold down the A button, and that does it. So with 33 stages, that can be 0.8, which is 33 timepieces, which is absolutely amazing. And a lot of the other ones, either taking 0.5 or just 1, there's actually not that many A presses left. There's 7 A presses left in the entire game right now. And the thing is, if we could just jump a tiny bit higher, just a tiny bit higher, first off, She Came From Outer Space RTA would become very, I wouldn't say easy, but it would be possible within like 2 or 3 hours of try. You would be able to do She Came From Outer Space in RTA if we could just jump a tiny bit higher or further, either of those. That would make that possible. Also, just a tiny bit higher. At least, actually, if we could jump a tiny bit further, the moon would be an A press, and I think we might save one in Owl Express as well. I don't remember Owl Express right now, actually. What exactly the A presses were in Owl Express. Wait, what was Owl Express again? Oh, that thing? Oh, that thing. Yeah, Owl Express is also, if we could just jump a tiny bit higher, also from a wall, jump a tiny bit higher, Owl Express would go down in A presses as well. Queen Essence Manor is still an A press. Village would probably still be an A press, but this one would be 0 and this one would be 0 if we could just jump a tiny bit higher. So if we could just jump a tiny bit higher, we would get this down to like 4 or 3 A presses, depending on how well we can use it in all these different situations. And then if we could jump a tiny bit higher and a tiny bit further, one more A press falls out, the one in the moon. And then if we can somehow get around wall run sections, which is probably not going to happen, but if somehow we would find a way to like warp up walls, like zip up walls or something, I don't know how that would happen, but if that was possible, we would be able to save more A presses there. So if we get across walls somehow, it would save like 2 or 3 more A presses. And then if we could do all of that, the only A press left in the game would be Queen Vanessa's Manor jumping up to the timepiece. So yeah, these are like the three big things that need to happen. Somehow warping on top of walls or zipping on top of walls, anything, any way to climb on top of walls that are really high without having to do the wall run sections. That would save a bunch of stuff. Then jumping a tiny bit higher and or a tiny bit further. Like, I'm gonna lump these two together. A tiny bit higher would also get you a tiny bit further. But if you could do that as well, I think all the other A presses in there would also fall out. So these are like the 2 main things. And then the third one is just, well, that's the Queen Vanessa one where you just kind of have to press the A button to get the thing. But I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of bug or glitch that doesn't involve the A button, where you can somehow still use hats or even a dive. That would also be nice. Or even actually not a wall run. Like even a dive or the ice hat at the end of Queen Vanessa's Manor. That would actually save that. So it's like the 3 things that need to happen to save every single A press in the game. And yeah, that would be that. Because like I said, for menuing, you could use keyboard and mouse. You could even do everything with the controller and then switch to keyboard and mouse to just press the enter button or something, or do a click or whatever you need to do to not do an A press or jump input rather. And then you could say do the entire game, even with menuing, without pressing the A button or the A button equivalent on other control schemes. So that's pretty much it. I think for the most part that's going to be the end of the A button challenge, because I think we're pretty happy, and these 3 things that I mentioned are probably going to be things that I mean, you could go obviously out of your way and try to brute force finding any of these glitches, but brute forcing glitches is something that is not fun to a whole lot of people, and unless your name is Sockfolder, it probably won't be very effective. But I think if we would get Sockfolder invested into this game for, let's say, like a week, I think this would be down to 0 A presses, even Queen Vanessa's Manor. I mean, he's Sockfolder, but that's not going to happen. Anyway, I think what was going to happen is we might be able to find stuff out like that, like, because we're just going to, or not me, but people are going to speedrun Hat in Time, the regular game, more and more in the future as well, obviously, especially when DLC comes out at some point. And maybe there's patches. Patches can also maybe at some point accidentally introduce a bug or a glitch at some point. And maybe throughout the times with people speedrunning the game, we will figure out some sort of bug or glitch that can do something about these three things that I've mentioned. So yeah, at least that would be that. This was supposed to be a very short video. It's been like too long. Anyway, that was that. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have anything else to talk to me about, tell me in the comments below. That was the end for the 8-button challenge for now, unless something amazing happens. And yeah, I might do one or two or some more like what is it, challenge runs from the game. And of course I'm gonna play the DLC. I guess if the DLC comes out, I can do the 8-button challenge with DLC as well, but whenever it happens, you know, no rush. But for now, maybe some challenges, but I'm probably done with Hat in Time for the most part. I'm of course gonna still do the custom map stuffs, but I think for the channel I'm gonna go back to playing other games and going back to maining SM64 ROM hacks. So yeah, that's the thing. That reminds me, I called it a ROM hack just recently. I need to actually just do that and upload that. That would be next. That was it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. See you guys next time.